What is up, guys? Welcome to the second installment of the combo videos for the Xiangjian deck. This video is going to focus primarily on combos that involve the Tenyi cards, and I'm excited to get into it. If you missed part 1, which covers combos that any version of the deck can do, including the pure version, check the description for that. It will be linked, as well as all the other parts of the Tenyi videos that I've been making. But yeah, let's get into it. The Tenyi cards themselves are interesting, I guess, if you haven't read them. They tend to synergize with non-effect monsters. So they all have kind of this shared text that we're interested in, where you can special summon them if you control no effect monsters. So you special summon them from your hand. And then if you ever control a face-up non-effect monster, so this includes their Link 1, as well as the Xiangjian tokens that get summoned during this deck's combos, you can activate a Tenyi's effect in hand or graveyard, and it'll do something beneficial. So we play typically 3 Tenyis in this version. You play Vishuddha as a removal card. It bounces back one of your opponent's cards to hand. Ashuna gets any of the other 2 Tenyis from the deck, but it locks you into worms for the rest of the turn. And then Adhara is a recursion for your banished worms. So you can add back banished Tenyis, and you can also add back banished Xiangjians that you banished with Tai A or with Xiao. So that was a lot. But let's just jump into the first combo. It's actually pretty simple. It's going to be similar to the Tai A combo in the first video, but it's going to show that Tenyis can help add a little consistency. In Pure, if you open Tai A by itself and nothing else, you have nothing to banish for it in the graveyard. But in the Tenyi build, you can get a Tenyi in the graveyard easily by special summoning it and licking it up for Monk, and now you have fodder for your Tai A. So we're going to go Token, and then we're going to immediately go into Xiao. We're going to use both Xiao and Tai A here. And we're going to dump Adhara with Tai A, because Tai A can dump any worm monster when you synchro with it. So we're going to dump Adhara, and then Xiao can add whatever. So if you add Sudden Shift, then this is kind of the standard go-to. This is a conservative approach. You get a pop 2. And a super nice thing about the Tenyi build is that you oftentimes end up with this Monk on the field, and now your Sudden Shift can pop the Monk and 2 cards instead of having to pop your Xiao 2 cards, which is really, really beneficial, because preserving the Xiao gives you a negate on your turn 3 in case they have a pushback. And it also means that sometimes you have these awkward scenarios where you really want to use your Sudden Shift pop, but you haven't used your Xiao yet, and you have to pop your Xiao without using that negate. So this can kind of avoid that, because now you can have the Monk as fodder for the Sudden Shift. If you choose not to go for Sudden Shift, you can also go for Longyuan, the level 6, and there's a really cool piece of synergy in the Tenyi deck here, where since you sent Adhara with the Tai A, and you have a non-effect monster, the Monk, you can use the Adhara to add back the Vishuddha you banish at the start of the combo with the Tai A. And now you can discard the Vishuddha you just added back to summon your Longyuan. So this summons a token, you synchro for Chengying, or Baroness if you haven't if you have Baroness and you haven't used Ashuna yet and you're not locked into worms, you can summon something else. And what's cool here now is that if you'll recall the OTK combo I mentioned in the first video, you'll remember that Longyuan plus Xiao plus Chengying plus 1,000 damage is game. So with a Monk on board, this is actually exact game, a little more than exact game, because we have banished Tenyis. Now that the Vishuddha is in the grave, we've never actually used this bounce effect. So if our opponent has cards, we can use Vishuddha to get rid of one of them by banishing itself. And this will trigger the Chengying, which will get rid of 2 more cards, one from their field, one from their grave. And then this itself is 8,200 damage plus the Longyuan on an empty board. So this is another extremely easy way to go for game off of Tai A and a Tenyi. So kind of showing that the Tenyi cards have a really cool latent synergy with the deck. They help boost consistency slightly, and they can be used offensively like this to apply a lot of pressure and go for game. This next combo is the Chaofeng combo, and in my opinion, this is one of the reasons you play the Tenyi build over the pure build, is access to this specific combo. What the goal is to summon a Chaofeng made with a light Xiangjian as material, and so all of your opponent's light cards will be shut off, and that will give you protection against a lot of light hand traps such as Nibiru. So there's a couple of different ways to go about this. The first I'm going to show is getting to just a certain state in the game. So we're going to go Ashuna, summoning itself, making a Monk, summoning a Vishuddha, and then using Ashuna's effect to get Adhara. So this is the board you're trying to get to with these 3 monsters. You want to get to Adhara plus any level 7 Tenyi plus a Monk. And the Monk is honestly optional, it's just here as fodder. So Ashuna plus any other of these two Tenyi will get you to this board. And any three of these, or any one of these rather, plus a vessel for the dragon cycle will also get you to this board, plus an extra Tenyi in the hand. So you're trying to basically get Ashuna in the grave while having Monk on field and one of these in hand, and so Vessel is one very easy way to set that up. Essentially, this is a Foolish Burial for worms, and then if you control a non-effect monster like Monk, you can Rhoda a Tenyi with a different name. So I'm going to put Vessel back in the deck here. So in this case, now we have a level 1, a level 7, and an extra body. And if we didn't have a starter, a nice part of the Tenyi engine is that we can go straight into Chixiao here and search a starter or search Sudden Shift. And this means that if we don't see any engine, but we see 2 Tenyis, then we do have engine. So it's one way to slightly up the consistency of your deck, because these 2-card Tenyi combos will get you to Chixiao, which will just get you rolling for the rest of the game. So that is one upside. This combo is going to assume you do have a starter. So, for example, we have a Tai A in hand in addition to these Tenyis. You open combos that get these 3 Tenyis on board about 40% of the time, and so you're opening a starter on top of that. And we're just going to go ahead and continue here. In this line, we're going to synchro off Adhara and the extra level 7 for Abashia. And if they happen to have 2 cards, or 1 or 2 cards, you can return it into deck with the Bashia, but typically you're going to be trying to do this in turn 1. So we're going to activate the Bashia's effect to target the Monk on the field and the Adhara in the graveyard, and we're going to try to revive the Adhara in the grave. So this is what the Monk is here for. It's free fodder, and it happens to work well with the Tenyi cards. So we're going to do that. Bringing back the Adhara, and now with the level 1 tuner plus the Bashia, we're going to go into Chaofeng. So Bashia is a Xiangjian and it's light, so that means that Chaofeng is going to prevent the opponent from activating the effects of monsters with the light attribute. So this is really, really strong. What it means is that it turns off all of their light hand traps. So Nibiru, Ghost Ogre, Effect Failure, and Gamma are all turned off. So they have to kind of use those cards suboptimally. They have to kind of drop them the moment you threaten this Chaofeng. So if you have, Bashia plus Adhara, they have to nib you. If you activate the Bashia effect to revive, they have to Gamma it, or they have to potentially Valor it. And it means that since you haven't even normal summoned yet, you can just go ahead with your starter, and then your starter won't get hit by that same hand trap. So that's pretty good. And then the Light Chaofeng itself puts in a lot of work in many matchups. I've mentioned Drytron before as something that this card is very good at stopping. Additionally, if you're against any deck that makes Zeus, then they can't really threaten you with Zeus under a Chaofeng because Zeus is light. So this is just a great card to have in the field. After this, we're going to normal our starter. So we're going to normal Tai A, banish something, and then go into Chixiao as per normal. Don't forget also, you can use Adhara here. So Adhara, you can activate, like any other Tenyi, when you control a non-effect monster, this can add back a banished worm. So it's very easy to forget this. So you can just end up plowing ahead with your combo. But if you want the add back, you can do it here and just add back the Ashuna that you banished earlier in the combo. And the Tenyi deck has this neat little resource loop with Adhara plus Ashuna, where you can basically keep using the Ashuna every turn, and you can keep summoning Adhara and then adding it back. So it's a nice way to get some free advantage every turn. So you can do it here and add back this Ashuna. You can also wait and leave the Adhara in the graveyard, because if you end up banishing a Xiangjian with either Tai A or with Chixiao, your level 8 Synchro, you can add that banished Xiangjian back to your hand with Adhara, which is a cool way to guarantee engine in hand for a following turn. So, for example, if you make a Chixiao and then on their turn you banish this Tai A with your Chixiao, and then on your turn you add it back with Adhara. So that's a cool little interaction you can consider. In this replay, I'm going to add it back right away, and then go into Chixiao. And now we're going to use both Chixiao and Tai A. I'm just going to dump another Adhara, but you can dump kind of whatever you want. Second Sudden Shift could be good here. You can dump a Moye for future use. I'm going to add Sudden Shift, and this is going to be the ending board. It's going to be Sudden Shift plus Chaofeng plus the Chixiao negate. Of course, you can also add Longyuan if you wanted to. So a nice part of the Adhara adding back here is that you get this free hand advantage, which I mentioned is one of the strengths of the Tenyi build. You can just discard the Ashuna you added back for the Longyuan immediately, and then summon a level 10 Synchro. Because you activated Ashuna this turn already, you are locked into worm monsters, so the only level 10 you can summon is Xiangjian, the level 10 Synchro. So you can't summon Ready Rose, and in a post-Baroness world, you can't summon Baroness in this combo. But Xiangjian is still very strong, and the important part is that even without Baroness, you are still insured against Nibiru because this Chaofeng is on the field turning it off. So you can feel free to kind of quote-unquote overextend and put an extra monster on the board because you're not going to be overcommitting into a card like that. Although you still will be vulnerable into board breakers like Dark Ruler no more, so it is possible to still overcommit. You have to kind of make that decision. I tend to go for Sudden Shift because there's a lot of really cool synergy. If Sudden Shift destroys an opponent's monster, then I can activate my Chaofeng's effect to summon a worm monster from deck with the same attribute as one of those monsters. What is very neat about this deck is that we actually have matching monsters for all 6 main attributes. So if we destroy a Dark, Light, or Earth, we can add, or we can summon Vishuda, Ashuna, or Adhara. So those cover all of those attributes. And then if we destroy a wind, we can get Tai A. If we destroy water, we can get Moye. And if we destroy a fire, we can get Xiangjian. So I thought that was a very neat little piece of synergy that this deck has. Although you don't really want to be summoning a Xiangjian from the deck because you won't be getting the token. But it is, I think, really neat that it has this little synergy where we can basically fetch any worm by just destroying something with Sudden Shift. Alternatively, if you choose to destroy the Chaofeng itself with Sudden Shift, because you can target a worm monster you control, and Chaofeng is a worm, then Chaofeng will be destroyed, and then when this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, so whether it's by Sudden Shift or just dying some other way, you can add any tuner from your deck to your hand. So immediately, you can add like Ash Blossom, and then the Ash is an additional way to stop the opponent on their turn, and then on your turn you have your resources to keep going. An interesting thing is that you can actually add Ecclesia, the Virtuous in White, who is a level 4 spellcaster that this deck typically tends to play, or at least I tend to play in this build, because Ecclesia is a tuner. So I think that's a really cool piece of synergy in this deck, that you can just add Ecclesia when Chaofeng dies. And I think even if you are on the team that doesn't like Ecclesia in this build, I think you may still want to consider playing 1 just for this purpose, because it's a really neat little interaction that will fetch you follow-up, which is always a nice thing to have. But that does it for the Chaofeng combo. This is one of the most important combos in this deck, and this is, I think, important to know, because it's one of the reasons you play this deck. So, yeah, moving on. Next up is going to be a little more gimmicky of a combo where you may be in a matchup where you really value the Light Chaofeng. An example of this would be something like maybe Evil Twin or Drytron, obviously. And it may be good in the matchup, but your hand is awkward. So one big flaw of the Tenyi build is that typically you need to open a combination of 2 Tenyis to effectively make use of them. And what happens oftentimes is that if you only have 1 Tenyi and the rest of your hand is Xiangjian cards or generics, then the 1 Tenyi is kind of a liability and is not really doing much for you, especially on turn 1 where you can't get value out of a card like Vishuda. So this is a neat little way to do that, and the idea is you're going to be using Dragon Sword as a generic Rhoda for worms when you control a synchro monster. So we're going to start off, this is going to be any starter plus the Rhoda plus Vishuda, and so you can't use the Rhoda here as a starter. You have to already have a starter that's live, which is a little bit annoying. But we're going to go Moye, revealing the Vishuda in hand, summoning a token, and then we're going to go into the bread and butter play, except instead of Chixiao, we're going to be summoning Chaofeng or Omega. So very simple idea here. We're going to grab a Tenyi with Dragon Sword, and then the Omega is going to clear our field so we can go into the Tenyi combo. So Moye is going to draw a card. We're going to get a second Moye. And then we're going to activate Dragon Sword. Because we control the Synchro, we can add a Worm. So we're going to go ahead and add a Shuna here. And then we're going to banish the Omega to clear our field and rip a card from our opponent's hand. And Omega is quite decent in this deck by himself. He's a hand rip that comes back, he can recycle your banished cards, and he's just a solid card. But there's extra synergy because now we can freely use our Tenyis without the extra effect monsters clogging our zones. So we're going to go Monk, and this is the same play as the last replay. So we're going to go Monk, Vishuda, and then activate Ashuna, get Adhara, and then you could go into Chixiao here even. You don't have to go for Chaofeng. So this is just a way to get a free level 8. Typically, I would value the Rhoda as getting another follow-up, and then I would just go into Chixiao, probably with the Moye instead. So I don't think I would go this route if I'm not going for Chaofeng, but you definitely have it as an option to go for Chixiao here. Instead, I'm going to do the Bashia play, pop Monk, revive Adhara, and then pass on a Light Chaofeng. Because the purpose that I had in mind when I made this combo was, maybe there's a matchup where you really value this Light Chaofeng, and so there are cool ways to do it in hands that don't seem like they can do it. So yeah, a little more gimmicky. I don't know how often this is going to come up, but I thought this was cool enough to share. This next combo is going to be, again, one of the more practical combos where you're kind of going into a board and you are trying to, or I'm going to be demonstrating at least how to use the Tenyi cards and the Xiangjian cards to break established boards. Our opponent in this case is a not very good Cybers player who has somehow managed to get 2 Exceeds on the field in his 2 Imperm set. So this is just kind of, for show, so don't take it too seriously. And the idea is we're going to be using Longyuan and a Tenyi to be breaking boards going second. And I think I'm excited about this line because this is not something that is super explored in the OCG, because very typically you can just Longyuan, summon a card, and then summon Baroness, and then Baroness goes Burr. But we don't have Baroness, obviously, and so I think there are other routes you can do that are very, very lucrative and have a lot of potential in this deck. So this particular hand is going to be Longyuan plus Ashuna. There are a couple hands that can do the same thing. So if you have Longyuan plus Fodder plus like Vessel or something, it will do the same thing. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start. We're going to discard the Ashuna for the Longyuan. This activates in hand, by the way. So summoning the token. We're playing the 2 Imperms, so I just want to reiterate that you can't Imperm the Longyuan because this is all one effect. So the token is summoned from the effect that activates in hand. So that doesn't do anything here. We're going to activate the Ashuna now because we have a non-effect monster, and summon Adhara from deck. So again, in the OCG, you typically see people go into Baroness, and what happens a lot is that you start with level 4 and you trade resources with them, and then after you've cleared their disruption, you summon your Longyuan and end on Baroness as a way to just kind of take control of the game. So without that as an option, I think something we can do in the TCG is use Longyuan a little more aggressively and kind of reverse the roles. So we're going to be starting with Longyuan to break boards, and then after powering through disruption, we're going to be using a level 4. So Longyuan here is going to synchro not with the token, but with the Adhara into a level 7. So in this case, we're going to grab Yazi. And this is, I think, the core of this play. Just being able to go Adhara plus Longyuan, or even, like, honestly, an effect failure plus Longyuan into Yazi can help you power through these boards and break through stuff. So Yazi is going to destroy itself and one of the opponent's impermanences, but not before we do a little 1200 damage with Longyuan. And then we're going to use Yazi to take out 1 disrupt. Yazi is going to grab our engine, so we're going to grab Tai A from deck. And Tai A is going to activate its effect to try to summon a token. Our opponent, who heard from a certain someone that it is good to Imperm the starters in this deck, is going to foolishly activate Imperm here and negate the Tai A because, I don't know who told him this, but someone told him it was good to stop the starters. In this case, we haven't actually used the token from Longyuan, so we have an extra token that can help us play better into cards like Imperm and Valor on the starters. So of course, this is kind of just illustrating that point. In reality, you would probably never Imperm this in this game state. You would hold it for a synchro. But I thought it was interesting that you get left with this extra token here that you can now get value of with cards like your Tai A. So we're going to banish the Adhara as well. We're going to use this to add back the Longyuan that we just banished for Tai A. And now we're going to go into the Bashia play from the first combo replay that I showed for the pure deck. Where now we can go Tai A, Bashia, and then both of those go on the same chain. We're going to mill the Moye, and then Bashia is going to spin back 2 cards to their deck. And then Bashia is going to destroy itself, revive Moye. And now, because we just added back Xiangjian that we banished with Tai A, now we have 1 in hand to show for Moye. So really efficient resource like cycling in this deck, and one of the coolest ways to do this combo, I think. So we're going to reveal the Longyuan, we're going to summon a token, and then do the bread and butter play, going to Chi Xiao, draw 1, and then adding Sudden Shift. So the draw is going to be Ash. I don't know why I didn't draw for this combo, but just assume it's a generic. And this gets a Sudden Shift plus Chi Xiao, and we've removed 3 cards. Technically, they wasted an Imperm, so that's not super realistic because you wouldn't really see that. But again, a little bit proof of concept. Note that in this particular line, if you play the Numeron OTK, you can't go for it because you're warm locked by Ashuna. So very important to be aware of is when you're warm locked and when you're not, and so which lines you can go for. But because you've cleared a lot of cards and you've gotten a draw off the Moye, you have or rather you've gained a lot of resources during this combo, and you can typically just win with Sudden Shift plus Chi Xiao going on here. So this is, I think, one of the cooler combos that you can do with Longyuan in the TCG that we can kind of adapt to our lack of Baroness. And I think the funniest thing by far in this combo is that you haven't actually normal summoned the entire time. So all of this was done on special summoning. So you special summon the Xiangjian, you special summon the Tai A off the Yazi, and then you special summon the Moye off the Baxia. So you have not normaled, and you've done all this without that. So this is one of the cooler combos, and I think you need to keep level 1 plus Longyuan into a Yazi kind of in the back of your head during these games as a offensive tool to break boards. This is going to be the last combo in this video. It's going to be kind of a tech more specific to the mirror, and the idea is we're going to be using Shooting Riser Dragon to access a floodgate, such as Token Collector. So this is something that the OCG has been doing in the mirror match, because if you send your own Token Collector and you have a board, then your opponent is going to really struggle to kind of play through your cards while under a Token Collector. And we may see the same in the TCG, but it depends on how popular the mirror is. So if this deck is not, tier 1 or the most rep, then you probably won't see people dedicate side deck space to Token Collector. But I think this is good to know. And this is doable in the pure build as well. You don't really need the Tenyis for this, but the Tenyis do increase your ceiling a little bit, and I wanted to share that. So you need the Rota for this. No other starter works. You have to have the Rota because you're going to summon a level 7 Synchro. And you have to have some way to modulate level here. So we're going to Rota for Tai A. We're going to bring out Adhara. And then we're going to normal Tai A, banish the Rota, summon a token. And then the Rota is going to modulate the level of one of our cards by 1. So we're going to reduce it to level 3. And then we're going to Synchro for Shooting Riser Dragon. So what this card does is that it is a Foolish Burial for any monster lower than level 7. So this is what we're going to use to dump Token Collector, and although we can't use it this turn, the idea is we want it for the opponent's turn. So we're going to be using both Riser and Tai A here. Tai A is going to dump Ashuna, and Riser is going to dump Token Collector. Now we're going to continue by tagging out the Tenyi on field into a Monk. And this is going to give us a non-effect monster so that our Ashuna Engrave is live. So we're going to use Ashuna to get Vishuda. This could be any level 7, but the only one is Vishuda that we play, so this is going to be just sitting on the field for a while. And note that our Riser Dragon now, because we send a level 4, this is level 3. And we can synchro this with the level 7 Tenyi to summon out a level 10 synchro. So we are Wormlocked currently, and we're going to be summoning Xiangjian in this case. And we're going to pass on this with the Token Collector Engrave. The idea is very simple. It's going to be very difficult for them to play through this Token Collector with the Xiangjian on the board, and vice versa. They can't really kill the Xiangjian with the Token Collector Engrave, because this card is very annoying in the mirror. So this is the idea. One thing I say in the description, which is not actually accurate, is that you can't go into cards like Baroness. That's actually not true. I realized it in retrospect. You can sit on the Riser on the field. So you can have this level 3 Riser sitting on the field plus your level 7 Tenyi. And then on the opponent's turn, when you're no longer Wormlock, you can actually Excel Synchro into level 10. So if we have Baroness available, you can go Riser plus Vishuda into level 10. If you're against some graveyard deck where you for some reason want a Floodgate, then you can go into a card like Ruddy Rose Dragon. So you don't really have to go into Xiangjian, but it's a cool option. Another option that I was told about actually after making this combo was you can send Necroworld Banshee, which is, I think, a really interesting deck. And then with Necroworld Banshee, you can search Zombie World. And Zombie World is also a very strong floodgate, especially post-Bode. It hits a lot of current decks, and then it hits this deck because it turns all your worms into zombies. And so all of your synchros that require worms are turned off. It's good against Flunderies because they can't tribute summon. So that's another neat floodgate you can dump off Riser. And then furthermore, if you have Xiangjian on the field and you have a Necroworld Banshee in grave, you can trigger the Xiangjian by banishing the Necroworld Banshee. So I think this has a lot of really cool synergy, both in the mirror and potentially in other matchups. That is one way that this deck has not really been fully explored yet. So definitely wanted to share this and get this out there. But that is more or less the point of this combo. And that's going to wrap up this video, actually. I don't think there's anything else I have left to share for this. So thanks a ton for all the support, especially in the last video. There were a lot of really cool comments about how, it was combos that people wanted to see and good presentation. And so I really appreciate those. Next up is going to be, I think, at least one commentated match. I think I'm going to be uploading a match between me and a friend of mine who is playing Evil Twin post-Bode. And so you can expect that either in a day or in 2 days, and that'll be on this channel. So as always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and leave feedback about anything you liked or didn't like. Depending on, how much like revolutionary work is done with this deck in the future, I might do another video on combos that get discovered. But for now, I think this is going to be it. I'm going to be signing off, and I will see you with some duel replays in the future. Thanks for watching. Peace.